Praise the Lord, and it's Lord who's back with another Lord video, and this time it's Pretender to the Throne Battle Tower. And I'm showing two nodes, node 204 and 208. So the video we're seeing now is node 208. This was my highest level clear, and the highest clear in global, which is pretty cool. And talk about this node, I mean, the node wasn't too complicated. It was, you could have quite an unusual setup on this because I used Caccatrice with Lightning Skin, using Ragnarok. Pretty standard build, nothing more to say on it. But for sub deck, I was using Riku with just basically support buff cards. The reason for that was it pretty much has Riku's ultimate has an effect that's quite similar to Sephiroth's, but unlike Sephiroth, is range class, and more specifically, it has access to Earth, so that'll be more relevant later on in the boss fight. So first round, 2 wind enemies. We've got a Omega, some weird dragon thing. It should be on Game of Thrones, but it's a pretty easy fight. I could have nuked this unbroken, but I decided to just go for one break, which you'll see shortly, and just get my Mobius gauge to where I wanted it to be. I wanted to get my Mobius gauge to be as high as I could for the next round. So this first round's just basically a setup. I'm just setting up for the most optimal strategy to go into the second round. Nothing too much more to say on that. It's pretty standard strategy. I'm just going to break and just take the enemy's health down as low as I can and kill them at the point where I want my Mobius gauge to be. That's pretty much it. I mean, I'm not going to use Chaos. Don't really need to. But I could use that as a substrate. Don't really need to be honest. Just want to maximize my Mobius gauge for the next round. And the reason I'm doing that is because in the second round I'm fighting Enil, which is a light monster who's quite difficult. You need to do a chain break strategy to defeat Enil effectively, and to do that I'll have to go into my, well, basically have to activate my Mobius zone to give myself the best chance to go into the boss fight. So we go round 1 complete, pretty easy fight, can't really hype it up too much. So this second round's going to be much tougher. As you can see, my Mobius gauge is almost full, and all my good stuff, all my support cards are on cooldown, so that's good. So I've just activated Chaos to debuff the enemies. And so Enil's the trickiest enemy on this round, so my strategy for this is to take it down with a 2-break strategy. Now, because I manipulated my Mobius gauge so effectively in the first round, I am able to break Enil first time around by going into my Mobius zone. And so for the second time I'll break it, I'll have to use 2 ultimates, which will be more difficult, but not impossible. So, talking about the job that I'm using, so I'm using Caccatrice, which is the new X Sarah job, and it's a pretty decent job. So it's favors Earth and Light because it has 100% Earth enhance, 100% Light enhance, has 200% painful break, which is really good, and 100% improved critical, 100% exploit weakness, which is pretty decent, and 150 to ability chain, which is pretty good. So so I can use Earth effectively. And for the enemy Sarah is wind element, so Ragnarok will do pretty much capped damage on break, so I'll just hit all 9s, which will be pretty cool to see shortly.
Out of my way.
So this is a more difficult part of the battle, so I now have to break Enil. So NXD does, of course, does amazing break damage, so I'm taking the yellow gauge down to where it needs to be, which is easy enough. but I'll have to use 2 ultimates to break, which means I will have to switch to my sub-job and rely on copious amounts of prismatic RNG, which, you know, if you've seen any of my videos, that's what you have to do at the highest levels of tower.
I'm no one's slave.
So after my first ultimate, just short of breaking the nil, but I can switch to my sub-job and power up. So I've got more turns now.
I control my fate.
So now I have to rely on prismatic RNG. Let's see how lucky I am. So that's 1 return, 2 returns. Ooh, almost 3 returns, which would have been ridiculous, but building up my ultimate gauge. And here we go. So by using Chaos, Chaos reduces Anil's break gauge by 10%, so on other nodes you can use X-Warrior, Sean, the one, whatever you want to call it, you can use that to do 1 ultimate break strategy, as long as you got flash break, but for Kakashi, she only has 20% quick break, so with 5% custom skill panel, you're only getting quick break up to 25%. So you're just short of 1 turn ultimate break in Anil. And here we go, so we're moving on to the last enemy of the second round. It's a massive wind turkey type thing, which is it's not really difficult. So as you can see here, I'm just making sure to get my Mobius zone gauge to exactly where it needs to be to finish the fight in. So I want to go into the boss fight and have a Mobius zone to use. So as you can see, I've just manipulated the Mobius gauge. So I need Chaos for a Substrike card, but you can only use Chaos obviously once every 2 turns to lower your Mobius gauge. So if I had an attack card, which I don't, it's my Substrike card, I could use that to manipulate my Mobius gauge, but without an attack card as my Substrike, I just have to get my Mobius gauge to where I want it to be the more complicated way, by switching jobs, which is a bit more tricky. Sometimes you can get it wrong, but as you can see here, timed it perfectly to the last hit.
Out of my way.
So I'm going to enter the boss fight. My Mobius gauge will be pretty much activated. I'll just need to do a 1 turn. So here we go. Because Riku, my sub-job, has Earth, I can use Earth Force right now on my main job, switch to Riku, use the buffs, and then switch back, and I'll still have Earth Force activated, so that's the main reason, one of the main reasons why I used Riku on my sub-job. Because if Riku didn't have Earth, then when I switch back to my main job, my Earth Force would be lost, which, you know, would be disastrous. So my strategy against the boss here is to do a 1 break strategy, so I'm going to kill it in 1 break, which is fairly difficult, because it is quite tricky to break doing not taking enough off of the yellow bar to actually be able to break straight away when I double ult in my Mobius zone, as you'll see very shortly. So my sub-job Riku, I was using Artemis Bow for the extra pierce and enhance. I felt it was better than Magical Rave, which is why in the event rankings a few people have queried why I'd use Artemis Bow rather than Magical Rave. Well, as you can see for my tactic here, Artemis Bow is just slightly better. And so I need to ultimate 1 more time to break for boss, but I do need to shave a bit more of the yellow gauge off, so lucky prismatic return. As well as taking off the yellow gauge, I want to do as much damage as I can unbroken, which is fairly difficult because the boss is unguard immune. So an unbroken strategy really doesn't do too much damage, but I need to do just enough damage so that I can go into my break and kill the boss in one break. As you can see, it's going to be quite difficult because the HP on the boss at this level is insane. So you need to use every single turn. Every single action, I should say. So there we go. Just broke the boss just before its turn. And look at this damage, it's pretty cool. So Ragnarok does cap damage, which is pretty cool, but the enemy does have Clutch Wall, which is just activated. But even so, should just be able to do enough damage to kill the boss. So one turn remaining, last hit, boom, that's how it's done. So if I went up another lap, probably would have run into trouble. Would have had to adjusted my strategy, but that was it. Boss kill 208, so that's how the Lord does it. That's the highest clear on global. And yeah, it's good to share my setup, so hopefully you all had fun on that node as well. It wasn't the hardest, but definitely if you had Ragnarok, it was a nice node. Seeing cap damage and hitting all those 9s is pretty cool on break. And that's it. So this is node 204, so this was the hardest node I experienced in the battle tower by a country mile. This was a ridiculous node, a completely evil node. This video is slightly different from my other videos. I've always shown you all my successes, I've never shown you a failure, so I'm going to show you a failure to start off with and then the boss fight done right. So this is a very difficult boss fight because Terra is well, she's stun immune. Well, that's one thing. That means you have to time the Mobius zone perfectly when you go into the fight, which is nothing new. But you don't have the leeway that you have on the other fights because you can stun for a few actions, a few of the enemy actions, but you don't have this luxury on this node. And you also are using Ziza, which does all its damage on break. Outside of break it does very little damage, which is also makes this fight a little bit more difficult, which you'll see later on. Now this fight is needs a 2-break strategy. The difficulty is that by using Ziza you have just enough damage to do just under 50% of Terra's HP, but when Terra does get low HP, it will use Clutch Wall. So what that means is you have to use Chaos on the first round, and then you have to drag the fight on during the second round so that you can break Terra in the third round when your Chaos is off cooldown, and use Chaos to dispel Wall. That's pretty much a secret strategy of this boss fight, but it's extremely difficult because, as you can see, Terra's got 5 fire orbs, and when she has 5 fire orbs, this happens. So there's pretty much absolutely nothing you can do to mitigate Terra doing that. It is just complete luck how many orbs she starts off with. After you break and use Zizat, you will take her fire orbs down to nothing, because if you use an opposing element during break, then you will reduce her orbs, but she only needs to get 4 orbs to absolutely mess you up. So it is completely random whether she'll drive an element, whether she'll attack. When she does attack, it's not a given that she will draw a fire orb. She could draw earth or light orbs, so it is a complete just random lottery. But anyway, enough of that. We've restarted the node, so we're into the first round. So as you can see, I've just about to break that doggy thing, that fire dog, which is pretty tough enemy. Because that can't be stunned as well, so this node was just complete nightmare. The fourth node was just it made the other nodes in the battle tower look easy in comparison. So as you can see, I've just used Substrike to use my Lord of Hope card. The reason behind that is I want to increase my water force for an extra turn. Because even though I could break the Fire Dragon right here, I'm not going to break it this turn. Because I'm trying to get my Mobius gauge up to about 4 turns so that I can switch to my sub-deck and use my Warrior of Light card so that I can use Wall's Divine Shield for the second round, because I have to fight another one of those fire dog things that you can't stun. So I need Divine Shield for the second round to mitigate, to defend against the fire dog's first attack. So I'm basically just stalling here. I'm just using my abilities just to avoid tapping the enemy and breaking it. So I've switched now. So I've used my Ex-Moogle card for Faith 2 and I've used Wall. So I can switch back to my main deck and then break the enemy. So doing because I didn't have haste, I wouldn't be able to chain break the dragon, but I only need one break because it's pretty weak. There we go. So I'm into the second round. I have Wall's Divine Shield to take care of a fire dog. Apologies, I've got no idea what his name is. So I've just used Chaos to dispel the enemy. And I'm trying to get enough of the yellow gauge off this little dog. And then protect against its attack with Wall's Divine Shield. There we go. So I'm going to ultimate the dog to put slow on it. And then use my Lord of Hope soon, and then use Substrike to build up my ultimate gauge so that I can ultimate Behemoth and put debuffs on Behemoth, especially slow. There we go. And then I can break the little fire dog, like so, and nuke it down. Now if you look at his HP at node 204, it was a pretty difficult fight still. It's going to take every attack to kill that fire dog. One turn remaining, so one thing that happens in the battle towers is as you go around laps, HP increases. If I did a couple more laps, then it would have been impossible to kill the fire dog in one break, which would have made the fight extremely difficult, if next to impossible. And so for sub-deck, I'm using Tiger's Skin, and I'm using Terra Job, which is a Sarah job that has Mage Law and can use fire, has fire enhance, so and pretty decent exploit weakness. So by using Fiosa, it's a pretty viable strategy. So I can take enough damage off Behemoth, but still use free support cards, which is pretty decent. And because I'm just using one attack card here, just one attack card for you, so I have more support cards, which makes the boss fights slightly easier. So as you can imagine, I'm trying to go in the boss fight, I'm trying to go in the third round, and I'm trying to get my Mobius gauge to activate as soon as I go into the third round. So this is quite an awkward fight because even though Behemoth's not too difficult, because he can be stunned, can be slowed, and some of his attacks like rear is just a waste of a turn, and he will use debarrier as well, which is a waste of turn for him as well. So it's not too difficult, but I just have to make sure that I'm making sure that my Mobius gauge is going to be at near maximum going into the third round. I think I did this particular fight against Behemoth probably about 100 times, something ridiculous like that. The third fight against Terra Sarah is just completely reliant on RNG. In Japan, this whole battle tower was designed around a new card called Sea Float, which will sleep the enemy and use wall. So that basically gives you some breathing room to take down the yellow gauge of the enemy and take down its break gauge as well, so that it makes break strategies easier. But yeah, we didn't get that on global, so this battle tower was just ridiculously difficult compared to previous battle towers. But you know, that's how it is. You can only compete in the battle tower you have, not the battle tower you want to have. And so I'm thinking right now, how many actions do I need to do to get my Mobius gauge to maximum? So the amount of times I repeat this fight, I literally had it down to perfection. By muscle memory, I knew exactly how much damage I was doing with Fiosa, and how much I needed to manipulate the Mobius gauge by. Yeah, apologies, this fight's dragging a bit too much. It's not exactly the most exciting match, but it'll be over soon enough. Yeah, this is amazingly boring, so just to talk more about my strategy. So when you go into the boss fight will mirror your ultimate gauge, so I have to make sure that I get my Mobius, ultimate gauge to no more than half when I go into the boss fight, because I do need to tank the boss a few actions, and if he uses ultimate against me, I'll be pretty screwed. So there we go. So I'm in the final boss fight, all my support cards are on cooldown, my Mobius gauge is near perfect. So as far as skills concerned, I've given myself the best possible opportunity to kill Terra. So my strategy is to activate my Mobius zone, use my support cards, switch over to my ex-warrior, and debuff with chaos, and then just take off the yellow gauge, and then do a double ultimate for the last attack. So as you can see, Terra's got 4 Earth Orbs now, 5 Light Orbs and 2 Heart Orbs. So if she had 3 Heart Orbs at the start of the match, I'd have to restart it, because she would use her support ability, and that makes the fight completely unwinnable. So the amount of RNG coming into this fight is ridiculous. I really did hate this fight. It wasn't enjoyable, but it's enough of me whining, and so I'm into the break. So I'm doing okay damage against Terra, but we'll need 2 breaks to kill Terra. The difficult thing about killing Terra in 2 breaks is that she does have clutch wall, and my only ability that can take away her wall is using chaos, but it's on cooldown, so I will have to make sure that when I do my second break on Terra that I'm doing it in the 3rd round, so that I can use chaos again. So Terra's just attacked and she's got 2 fire orbs, so if she gets 2 more fire orbs this match is over. Let's see what she does. So she uses an element drive, which is good, so I'm safe. So I just need to keep taking down the yellow gauge. And as you can see here, Terra has she's got 9 earth orbs, 1 light orb, 2 heart orbs, which mean when she does use Ruby Ray, she'll only have enough fire orbs to cast Mountain Secret. She won't have enough orbs to cast Meteor, which is very, very good. As you can see, she drove Earth because she didn't have enough fire orbs to cast Meteor, and she's out of fire orbs right now. So I can tank 1 more attack, which was very, very good. So this is an extremely rare battle to get to this point. Typically she will have used Meteor by now. This was pretty much like 1 in 100 to get to this point. So now I'm in the perfect position to break Terra. So I'm going to drive my life orbs because Zizat does have vitality tap, so I want to keep my HP high to make sure I'm maximizing my damage, because every single attack will matter against Terra. And so what I'll do is I'll drive my heart orbs, I'll ultimate and then tap attack to break, like so. So I'm nuking Terra Unbroken right now, so she does have clutch wall. So I've slowed the game down because I want to see when the damage hits 0. When the damage does hit 0, it means Terra's wall has gone up, which means I'll need to dispel it with chaos, which I just did. So use Sapphire Beam to get more water orbs. So can I do enough damage to kill Terra in the break? Let's see. It's going to be extremely close. Let's see if the last hit does it. It does not, but I can do just enough unbroken. Otherwise I'd have to tank a couple of hits, which is risky. And hopefully Bio would have killed Terra, but never mind, I killed it unbroken. So there we go. That's node 204 complete, so I was the only player on global to actually clear that, which is pretty cool. Some videos finishing up, and we'll just finish off with just a quick scroll through the event rankings. So well done to Session in 2nd place, Monkid in 3rd place, and Tepi in 4th place, all my Discord colleagues, which is pretty cool. And well done to the other guys that finished in the top 9. And hope you guys enjoyed the Battle Tower, hope you had fun, hope you learned something new. Hopefully you found my video useful and informative, and all the best and have fun, and I'll see you for the next Battle Tower in July, hopefully. This is Lord signing off.